What is up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel, Mystic Watch, and today we got a gear guide for you. We're going to be doing how to gear Jericho. This is one of the most requested videos I get. Every time I show my Jericho, it's, can you show her gear? Can you show her gear? How do you gear this Jericho? So, I'm going to be explaining you how to gear the Jericho, but the main thing I want to explain is why we geared Jericho this way. So to start off, I've already made a gear guide that explains how to gear like 99% of the units. And the generic gear that is always good in any situation, there's two sets, right? It's attack defense and HP defense. And that is simply because how this game works. There's no like if, ands, or buts. It's not like, you know, I get so many people commenting like, well man, stop recommending attack defense or HP defense gear. If you actually decided to do the math and do this gear instead for Jericho, or not Jericho, for like this unit, or if you actually decided to, you know, test out other gear, maybe blah 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 blah. So no, that's not what this is about. This is just optimal gearing, where attack gear and defense gear, attack defense and HP defense are literally the best gear to run on almost everyone. And that has to do with multiple reasons. One, the other substats are pretty weak, right? These stats over here are really, really weak when it comes to their bonuses on the actual stats themselves. So for example, a crit chance 30%. If you're using 4-piece crit chance, 4 pieces of gear for 30% crit chance, it's really not that good. It's unfortunate. That's not a really good set. Crit resistance 30%, once again, not good. Recovery rate is a useless set. Literally useless. You got crit damage, which we're going to talk about, and crit defense and lifesteal. And none of which really end up getting used because they're very niche, you know, they're niche substats or stats in general. For example, let's just use crit damage for an example, right? Or crit defense. Crit defense means whenever you get hit with a crit, you know, you're reducing that crit by X amount. But if you don't get crit, you get destroyed. Because if you're pouring all of your resources into crit defense, and I don't mean just the set, I'm talking about the substats themselves, right? If I go and put my rolls into crit defense, I'm getting destroyed anytime I don't get crit. But if I put my substats into defense, it doesn't matter if I get crit or not crit because my defense is being applied in both scenarios. So this game doesn't give enough of a benefit to these other substats to make them actually viable as a gear set to run. But that's enough of that mini rant. Jericho is a pretty unique character that requires a unique set of gear and substats, and that's what I want to talk about. So Jericho, the reason why she's different is because she relies heavily on crit damage. So with her passive is increases crit chance by 10% per hero skill use. Meaning, you start off with base 30%, right? I have 34% with my outfits on, but base 30%. So you slowly scale up. With each skill you use, it's 10%. 10% more, up to infinite. It doesn't stop, it doesn't have a cap. You can scale this infinitely. Meaning, after a certain point, you can 100% guarantee that you will crit on any move you do. You also have to realize people have a resistance stat, which, crit resistance, which counteracts your chance of critting. But majority of the units in this game have low crit resistance. Now, there's a handful of units that have a decent crit resistance, but majority have a lower amount. But even if you are at 100% crit chance, that doesn't mean you're going to crit, because you have to take into account your opponents have crit resistance. So ideally you're a little bit over 100%, but the point being is that Jericho can guarantee herself to crit. Now, there's two kind of paths to go on with Jericho. So this discussion video, or this video in general, is going to talk about two things. Gearing Jericho when it comes to bossing and PvE, and gearing Jericho when it comes to PvP. Because those are two separate things, and they have not completely different. They have different gearing for each scenario, right? When it comes to optimal gearing. So let's start off with the generic, I want to use Jericho in PvP. I want to use her in just every, just generically use her in PvP, PvE, and whatever, right? What is the best way to go about it? So in that case, the best way to go about it is an attack set and a crit damage set. So you have a 4-piece attack set that gives you 20% attack, and then a 2-piece crit damage set that gives you 20% crit damage instead of a normal defense set, right? So normally you would go attack defense, but here you go attack crit damage. And the reason why you're going attack crit damage, because we're talking about PvP here, is Jericho in PvP does not crit for her first 5 moves, pretty much. Your opponents, you have a base 30% crit chance, your opponent has crit resistance, and then on top of that, a lot of people run Gil Thunder. Gil Thunder provides 30% defense-related stats, meaning people get an additional 30% crit resistance. What ends up happening is, your chance of critting goes significantly down. That means, why do I keep exiting out? You need attack on Jericho because you're not going to be able to crit all the time. And because of that, you need attack on her so she doesn't rely on critting as her main source of damage. Because Jericho, without critting, can still do significantly high amounts of damage, and that comes from her 2-card combo, where you apply a debuff, in this case Flash Strike, and then you use Flash Attack that inflicts weak point, and it does 3 times more damage against debuffed enemies. So even if you don't crit, you still hit like a truck, and if you do crit, you hit like a bigger truck. But yes, that is the main reason why you go attack and then crit damage as your 2 sets. Now, when it comes to the substats, the defense and the HP gear are going to all be normal, right? You go full HP and full defense. When it comes to your ring and your bracer or bracelet, you want a half and half split. So you have 10 lines of damage, right? So you got 5 lines on this and 5 lines on here. You want about an even split. So I have 3 lines of attack here and 3 lines there, so I'm a little bit off. So like ideally I would re-roll this one into crit damage, and it's not like my substats are perfect because this is SSR gear and I'm not worrying about it too much. But I got, oh sorry, I clicked on the same piece twice. I'm stupid. I got 2 pieces, 2 attack lines here and 3 attack lines here. Now, from what I heard, and I've yet to confirm this myself, apparently what I see a lot of people doing on higher ELO, MMR, I don't know what the heck you call it here, on higher rating and on higher levels of PvP, what people do is their bracelet is all attack lines and their ring is all crit damage. I don't know if that actually has an effect on your stats, but I'd have to do some testing on my own. For now, this is what I'm doing, because when it comes to rolling SSR gear, it's really, really costly. So I can't be picky and have all my lines, like, if I roll a good crit damage line, I just leave it, right? So that's pretty much what I did. And I left it at that. Besides that, that's really all it is when it comes down to gearing for PvP or just in general, right? This is good generic gear on Jericho that you can use all the time, no matter what. And you can also move this freely between, other crit damage based units like Green King for Grey Demon and Slater for Red Demon. You don't need crit chance at all in these substats. Keep that in mind. 0 crit chance because she gets it infinitely from here. Now, the main reason why we care about crit damage is because her ultimate is the hardest hitting nuking hit in the entire game, where she applies spike and hits for 2 times crit damage, up to 960% with a Gila partner. That's assuming you have her maximum ultimate at 6/6. See, that's why you really want crit damage. Now we're going to transition into, I want the best optimal Jericho build for PvE content. For example, for Guild Boss to get myself a good score, or for upcoming ranking PvE content, for example, Super Boss Battle. And when that comes out, I'll explain that more. But you compete with everyone else's score globally, and depending on where you finish, you get rewards. So ideally, you want the best possible Jericho because she's the one who gives you all the points from nuking the hardest. But what is the difference when it comes to gearing for PvE, right? If you want the best possible scenario, what ends up happening is, because it's PvE, it doesn't matter if you don't crit, because at the end result is you can do the same content infinitely until you get the result you want. So you ignore the fact that you run an attack set and you simply run full crit damage. And you run 6 pieces of crit damage, which gives you 60% bonus from having 3 sets. And that's the way you would go. It means you have a lot less attack, but the crit damage scales heavier. So for example, instead of you have this 4-piece attack set that gives you 20% additional attack, whereas you'd have two separate 2-piece crit damage sets, or we'll just call it a 4-piece set that gives you 40% crit damage, right? So it scales harder. Now, that isn't to say that you still need attack, right? Because at the end of the day, your attack is, you need a decent amount of base attack for your crit damage to scale off of. And if you have too low of a base attack, it doesn't matter how much crit damage you have. You can have 500% crit damage, but if your attack is absolutely garbage, it's not going to do any damage. So you don't want your attack stat to bottleneck your crit damage. So you still need the same, like you would keep the same amount of lines of attack and crit damage at the end of the day. You might have, for example, like 8,000 attack, but you'd have, what, like 260% crit damage. You'd have significantly more crit damage and you would end up doing more damage. And this is in the scenario where you're doing it purely for PvE and you would not run this in PvP, because in PvP it would be really, really bad. So let's do one match of PvP, just to show you guys off, just to show off what this Jericho is capable of. And for the fun of it, let's run. That's not it. That's not it. Where do I have? Crit chance food. There we go. Let's run crit chance food just because we can. And just to show off the Jericho a little bit. And we'll end off the video on that. So hopefully this explained a little bit as to why you gear Jericho that way. It's really not that complicated once you kind of understand the goal of what you want out of a unit. And yeah, whenever there's a unit that requires a different set of gear that isn't attack defense or HP defense, I'll make a guide on them. There really isn't too many. The original units that are going to drop from this game will have their own unique gear. Like in the sense where, you know, one unit will use resistance gear, other one will use pierce rate, things like that. Okay. We're gonna go 1, 2, 3. Let's see if this crits. So I have a 50% chance of critting right now, assuming he doesn't have a Guild Thunder in the back. Well, that's why we like Jericho. But unfortunately, Jericho is really only good in geared PvP, and she kind of falls off in ungeared, where you can't take advantage of the fact that she scales heavy with crit damage. So here I really get a good boost from being able to gear my Jericho. Not enough, man. Ooh. Okay. Let's do this. I'm waiting for more Jericho cards. Come on. Come on. Nice and good damage bond. Good job. I believe in you. I just wanted some Jericho cards. That's not Jericho cards. Oh, you're gonna petrify me, man? You're gonna petrify me? Bro, how many heals you got? Relax. No petrify. This will do. Come on, away. And then we'll end it off here. Bonachi? That is a lot of damage for a move that doesn't really do that much damage. The power of crit chance. There we go. Okay, we get it. Man, why you gotta do that? Ah. It's fine. Oh, he forfeited. Well, maybe that gave you guys a decent enough example of why I like this Jericho. And hopefully your Jericho starts hitting harder now. So that's going to be it for this guide. I'll most likely do these in the future where I'll show off the gear and then I'll do a quick little fun PvP match. That's really it. I have a couple of videos where I just use Jericho on PvP, just showing her off, nuking some people down. I gotta start climbing higher on Weird? Voice crack, sorry. I hit Champion 1 on Ungeared, and now I'm focusing my efforts on Gear. So the goal is going to be to hit Challenger on there, and we'll see once that happens. This is not the best team, by the way. It's just a fun team that I like to run because I really like using Jericho. That's going to be it for now. Thank you guys for sticking till the end. If you guys haven't already subscribed, please consider doing so. Leave a comment, like the video, you know, the basic YouTube stuff. It helps. It really does. And I'll see you all next time. Peace out.